Hello there, Hollows, and welcome to the third episode of Fundamental Flaws. This is a series where you guys tell me a design flaw you feel is present in any FromSoftware Souls-like, and I will discuss what I think maybe could have been done better, and I'll be selecting 4 or 5 of these flaws for each video. Before we begin though, make sure you comment your own flaw down in the comments below if you'd like to be featured in the next episode of Fundamental Flaws a few weeks from now. Currently I'm trying to stick with Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2 and Bloodborne, but if you do have any issues with Dark Souls 3, Sekiro or Elden Ring, then still feel free to leave them down below and I'll consider them if they make for a good enough talking point. Now the last episode of this series was about 2 months ago, before my Dark Souls 2 analysis video, so I'd like to welcome a lot of you to the series because my channel has pretty much doubled in size since then. So I hope that you'll all submit some flaws down below and I can talk about your ones hopefully in the next video. So we're starting off with a generic flaw across most Souls games for today's first flaw, and it was sent in by Caleb Harper. They say, I find it a flaw that you can't go back and fight already beaten bosses in any way. You either have to wait for the next new game cycle or get summoned. Dark Souls 2 and Sekiro both had options for refighting bosses, and I much preferred Sekiro's approach. I feel there should be the option to do so, especially after completing the game. I absolutely agree with this, and it's one of the unfortunate massive advantages of playing the game on PC, is every single game has a boss rush mod that's been created by some member of the community. Even Elden Ring does, and I'm pretty sure it did only a few months after launch. I really think that especially a game like all of the Souls games that have such a massive emphasis on the boss fights and fighting them and getting to grips with them and trying to get better at the boss fights every time you play the game and fighting the bosses with different builds and all that kind of stuff. I really think every one of these games should have a boss rush mode, or even just the option to fight each boss after you defeated it again in the menu, similar to Sekiro. Sekiro, I do think, for all of its flaws in my personal opinion, that's one of the massive advantages that Sekiro has as a game, is that ability to go back and fight every single boss as many times as you would like. And I think, really, Dark Souls 2 did handle this quite well, but the only issue with it is you have to use a bonfire aesthetic, which means that every time you fight it, the boss gets exponentially more and more difficult every single time you want to fight it, whereas it makes a lot more sense, like Sekiro does, just have it so you go to a bonfire and there's an option to fight every single boss again if you want to, at any point in your game. I really like that approach, and I really hope Elden Ring adds this same feature in with the Shadow of the Erdtree expansion that's going to be releasing later this year. Today's second flaw has been sent in by Chaos Plays, and they say, not warning the player that Lautrec will kill the Firekeeper at Firelink Shrine. I don't know if the Crestfallen Warrior says anything about it, but for new players, it's incredibly frustrating. Even if you look the solution up, you still have to progress through multiple areas without Firelink active. It makes runback so much worse at points. You also won't get what many consider to be the best ring in Dark Souls 1, which is the Ring of Favour and Protection, until Anor Londo. It seems overly punishing for a new player who doesn't know to kill the guy and or return the bonfire to life at Firelink. Also, the Firekeeper soul you get from him in Anor Londo doesn't imply that you can get Firelink back. If I remember correctly, the Firekeeper soul is a generic one, and it doesn't even mention Firelink. Now, I absolutely agree with this, but I also disagree with that a little bit. Now, one of the things that all of the Souls games, up until probably Elden Ring, are known for is having incredibly punishing mechanics if you don't do certain things in a certain way, or if you save a certain character, if you do certain things. Like, for example, if you accidentally attack a character too many times, it can cause massive consequences to your entire game. I do think that it should have been a little bit more of a hint. Maybe have Lautrec say that he's going to go back to Firelink or something when you talk to him first, and say that he really wants to get to Firelink, or he really wants to meet a Firekeeper and then do an evil laugh or something like that. Just make it a little bit more obvious that he does have malicious intentions specifically towards the Firekeeper at Firelink Shrine. Even then though, I think the window in which you need to kill him is incredibly small. If you think about it, you rescue Lautrec just before the Gargoyles, which is the first Bell of Awakening. You only have the time it takes for you to get down there and then kill Quelaag and get back up to Firelink. That's the only period you have. Once you've rung the second bell of awakening, he kills the Firekeeper, and that's the point in which Firelink Shrine is no longer active. So literally you only have basically, in most playthroughs, one chance to kill him. If you let him free, you only tend to go to Firelink Shrine once, which is on your way down to the depths, and sometimes you don't even go there at all after the gargoyles. Many times I've just gone straight down to the depths, straight down to Blighttown, without even returning to Firelink Shrine. Because if you're just doing a normal playthrough, you can level up at the bonfire, you can upgrade your weapons at Andre. There isn't really a reason to actually go back there. So sometimes you don't even go back to Firelink Shrine. So I do agree, but I do also like the fact that these Souls games do have massively punishing mechanics in them if you don't know what you're doing and if you don't pay attention. I know the game should probably explain it a little bit better, but I have a soft spot for these kind of mechanics in the games because it's something that most games wouldn't even think of doing, a massive punishing mechanic like this. Most games, they wouldn't want to do anything that's so massively damaging to the player experience. They would be scared to do something like that because they're trying to tiptoe to make sure that you get your constant dopamine fix. And I do prefer games that are willing to take massive risks like this, but I do still think maybe they should have hinted at this kind of thing a little bit more. So then, today's third floor has been sent in by Hayden the Third, which is why I put them at the third floor, because they're Hayden the Third. So they say, Bloodborne, in my opinion, is the frenzy status effect. It doesn't add anything to the game, and it just feels like a cheap way to rack up a few deaths and piss people off. I absolutely agree with this. I am doing my Bloodborne Let's Play right now, and I'm currently recording the videos. So the frenzy mechanic is absolutely bullshit. It's absolutely terrible. I hate the mechanic. And especially at, I think it's called the Nightmare Frontier, when you have this one enemy and you can't even get close to it, because if you attack it, it immediately gives you frenzy. If you get close to it, it immediately gives you frenzy and you die straight away. It's just incredibly punishing, and I think the main thing is the fact that the status effect lingers for so long after you've already seen the enemy. So you see the enemy, and then you attack them once, whatever, and in the time it takes you to kill them, your frenzy meter builds up so fast, especially if you have high insight, that it just completely, you have no chance of ever getting away. You just have to try and avoid the enemy, basically, which I really, really don't like, and I find it incredibly frustrating. And I think, because especially with me, I've been, in my Let's Play, which you will end up seeing when the videos come out, I have been trying to approach the entire game with high insight, because insight allows you to see more things, it makes certain aspects of the game more difficult, and I would like to try and get that more difficult experience. So I'm going through the game deliberately with high insight. I'm using every madman's knowledge as soon as I get it to try and get as high insight as possible. And this means, because that means that your frenzy resistance is lower, it means that frenzy builds up faster, which just makes this even more frustrating. And I really don't like it. I know apparently it was nerfed at the beginning of Bloodborne's life cycle a little bit. I think it should be nerfed even more, because it's really annoying, and like Hayden the Third says here, it's a cheap way to rack up a few deaths and piss people off, and I can't think of any other way to describe it really than that. Today's fourth floor was sent in by Astora Knight, and they say, I believe that Dark Souls 2 allowing players to be invaded while not human has the potential to be unfair to inexperienced players, especially when paired with the hollowing mechanic of reducing maximum HP. The risk-reward system in Dark Souls 3 of using an Ember was, in my opinion, more thought out and a good compromise between Dark Souls 2 and Elden Ring. My solution would be to block summons and invasions while not in human form, and for human effigies to unlock both while resetting and restoring your maximum HP. So, I'm going to start off with the first point, and then I'm going to get to the second point, which someone else has also commented on. So the first point is, Dark Souls 2 allows players to be invaded while not human. So this, I found this incredibly frustrating when I was playing Dark Souls 2, my recent Let's Play, which many people have criticized me for being too critical of Dark Souls 2, but, you know, I don't like what I don't like. You're free to like what you like, but it's one of the many things that frustrates me about Dark Souls 2 is that I think Dark Souls 1 handled so many systems so well, and Dark Souls 2 took a lot of steps back in many regards, and I think this was one of them. I think the humanity system that was put into Dark Souls 1 was a perfect balance, because you wanted to use humanity to reverse hollowing and kindle bonfires to allow you to summon help and get extra flasks, but then doing that had the adverse effect of allowing you to potentially be invaded. So it was a risk and reward mechanic. I really liked this system. Now, this person here also says about Dark Souls 3, which he also uses an Ember, which was similar, and like he says, it was a good compromise between the other systems. But I personally think Dark Souls 1 just simply did it better. Humanity is a finite resource in that game, and when you are early on and a very inexperienced player, it seems like it's really rare to get humanity. It's such a finite resource, but you need it to be able to kindle bonfires and to be able to get extra flasks and all that kind of stuff. But then you can, when you're a veteran player, you can then use that exact same system, that same resource, you can use it to heal in a pinch and to allow you to go even further without using SS flasks. And because at that point, usually you won't even really be summoning people if you're more of a veteran player and you're trying to play through the game yourself. You can even use it to then increase item drop rates and all that kind of stuff. This one resource has so many things that it's tied to. It's such an amazingly balanced currency for both inexperienced players as well as an amazingly balanced currency for veteran players. And I think that's one of the many reasons why I really like Dark Souls 1's mechanic, and I think personally they should not have changed anything to do with that system, including invasions, going back to the original point. I think it was a perfect risk-reward system about using that humanity resource so that then when you are you reverse hollowing, you can then be invaded, and I think that makes the system, that risk-reward system, perfect. And I think the other games do not do that system anywhere near as well as the original Dark Souls 1, but Dark Souls 3 was close, and I really do like Dark Souls 3's implementation of the system as well, and I think, like this person said, it's a good balance between the original system and the modern system that we have now in Dark Souls 2 and Elden Ring. The final flaw is tied to this one, but I want to specifically mention what Elijah Boyd said. He says, in Dark Souls 2, change hollowing to how the other games have it. No HP reduce and effigies restore health when used like embers and humanities. And yeah, this is expanding on the previous flaw, but I specifically really dislike how Dark Souls 2 handled the hollowing system. It was going back to Demon Souls' system of reduced health when you're not in a human form, but I think Dark Souls 2, it's like, again, Dark Souls 1 perfected the system, really. There's many downsides to being hollow in Dark Souls 1, but then in Dark Souls 2, it's like you reduce your health even more, and I think it was part of Dark Souls 2 trying to make the game hard for the sake of being hard, instead of balancing the difficulty to make it a really fun challenge to overcome. Instead, it had systems like this, which I feel like were a step backwards from what Dark Souls 1 did, and just made the game more frustrating in certain places when it didn't need to be. If you're a new player and you're struggling in a certain boss fight, you're losing your health again and again and again, and you might use a human effigy to try and summon help, but then you'll end up, especially if it's a boss like the Fume Knight, you might use all your human effigies like I did on my first playthrough, and then I didn't have that either, and then I couldn't use a human effigy to get back my health that I lost when I kept dying and dying again and again and again to the Fume Knight, which meant eventually I had so little health, way less health than I originally had, and no human effigies to be able to get it back, and it just made the game more difficult than it really needed to be, and more frustrating than I think it needed to be. So I personally feel like, again, this system should stay exactly how it was in Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3 with the Ember and Humanity system in regards to the hollowing system specifically. Although Elden Ring handles that kind of system not too bad in that regards anyway. So that concludes the third episode of Fundamental Flaws. Again, make sure to type any flaws down below in the comments if you would like to be featured on the next episode, and like I said earlier, I'm trying to stick to Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2 and Bloodborne, but I will still consider things that are relating to Dark Souls 3, Sekiro or Elden Ring if they do make for a good enough talking point. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you really enjoyed it and want to help me out loads, then please feel free to try and become a channel member. There's lots of rewards potentially. Like soon I'm hoping to potentially do early access to my critical analysis videos if you're a channel member. So I'm going to look into doing some of that if you really like my critical analysis videos. And also there's going to be exclusive members only posts and contacts and all this kind of stuff. And the main thing is, if you become a channel member, you're going to be helping me out to try and make this channel more than just a fun hobby for me. But you don't have to do that. I appreciate all of your support anyway. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe down below. Maybe even share this video with anyone you think might enjoy it if you feel it was good enough. Thank you again for watching. This is SoulReborn signing out. Have a good one.